A large portion of the Jewish nation has returned to its homeland, but the heart, soul, and mind of much of the Jewish nation are still in exile mode. This state of affairs must and will inevitably change. This is Torah Nation TV from Jerusalem, and we are speaking with the head of Machon, Shilo, Rabbi David Bar-Hayim. Shalom, Rabbi Bar-Hayim.
Shalom.
Machon Shilo recently received the following question via email from the 5th grade class of Hebrew Academy of Hartford, Connecticut, regarding the Nusah of Birkat Machon, and specifically regarding Nusah Eretz Yisrael. We were learning Mishnayot, Masechet Brachot, Perek Aleph, Mishnah Daled. We learned that the Mishnah says one is not allowed to shorten or lengthen a bracha. Our teacher was in Israel and obtained the Machon Shilo wallet-sized card with Birkat Machon in your Nusah Eretz Yisrael. After learning the Mishnah, we were wondering how you were able to change the brachot of Birkat Machon. Please send us any information that can help us understand.
Well, dear children, first of all, you are to be commended for asking such an intelligent question. And the answer is as follows. The Mishnah to which you refer in Masechet Berachot states, regarding the Berachot that we recite before and after Kriyat Shema, it says, Makom she'omeru laha'arich eno rashai lekatser, lekatser eno rashai laha'arich. In other words, in those places, with regards to those Berachot, that the Chachamim said one has to be lengthy, laha'arich, one may not be brief, lekatser, and vice versa. Rashi on that Mishnah explains that the two brachot that are mentioned in that Mishnah, one is mentioned as being long and one as being short. The two brachot following Kriyat Shema in the evening. The long bracha is Emeth Ve'emunah, and the short bracha is Hashkivenu. Or so it appears, at least in the usual printings of Rashi on the Talmud, even though this is in fact in addition to what Rashi wrote. But the intention nevertheless is correct, whether Rashi wrote those words or not. When the Mishnah refers to two barachot after Kriyat Shema, one Ahat Arukah, or Ahat Qesara, one long and one short, it is referring to those two barachot, Emeth Ve'emunah, which according to the Nusah of Bavel, in Eretz Yisrael they said Emeth Ve'yasiv, in the evening as well, and the second bracha is Hashkivenu. Why is Emeth Ve'emunah considered long and Hashkivenu, considered to be short? The reason for this is explained in the Talmud Yerushalmi, in Masechet Berachot, Perek Aleph, Halacha Waw, where it states that in that bracha that we say after Kriyat Shema, we are to mention a number of different things. Certain concepts must be mentioned. That is to say, we must mention Yasiat Misraim, we are to mention Makat Bechoroth, we must mention Malchut Hashem, we must mention Kriyat Yam Suf, and according to Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, quoted in the Yerushalmi, we must also use the expression Sur Yisrael v'Go'alo, which is based on a pasuk, and this is in fact the Nusah we find in Nusah Eretz Yisrael and also the Nusah of the Ashkenazim to this day. In other words, a bracha where a number of issues, a number of ideas and themes are to be mentioned, must be mentioned, that is referred to as a bracha arukah. Arukah, long in the sense that it doesn't speak of only one theme or one idea, but rather it speaks of many themes. It's not necessarily referring to the number of words that we use to express those themes, those ideas, but rather to the fact that it mentions a number of ideas in the one baracha. That is called the baracha arukah. And the baracha kesara is one that sticks to one theme, even if we happen to choose a more wordy way of expressing ourselves. So Hashkivenu, even though we mention a number of things, perhaps in most Nusachot today, even though one can say a very short version of Hashkivenu, but even a longer version of Hashkivenu actually stays focused on only one issue, and that is Shemirah, that Hashem should look over us, guard us, and let us go to sleep in peace and wake up in the morning in peace, with health and without fear, etc. So that is one theme, as opposed to the number of themes, number of ideas mentioned in Emet Ve'emunah. So when the Mishnah says Machon she'amru laha'arich eno rasha lekaser, is referring precisely to that in the bracha, such as Emet Ve'emunah or Emet Ve'yasiv, where we must mention a number of ideas, we cannot decide to cut the bracha short and only mention one or two out of those 4 or 5 themes. And when it says that a bracha which is kasar, we're not supposed to add other extraneous themes and ideas and concepts into that bracha. That is one statement in the Mishnah. The second statement in that Mishnah to which you refer says, Makom she'amru lahtom eno rashai shelo lahtom, shelo lahtom eno rashai lahtom. This is referring to the hathima at the end of a baracha, which does not in fact occur in all barachot. For example, as Rashi points out, a baracha where on that Mishnah, Rashi says a baracha where there is no hathima at the end is a baracha like Birkat HaPeroth. For instance, when we say a baracha on food, we say Baruch Atah Hashem Eloheinu Melech HaOlam, shall we say Borei Peri HaAdama. We don't add anything else, and we don't end with the second Baruch Atah Hashem at the end. That's called a hathima. And Rashi is telling us, or rather the Mishnah is telling us, that such a baracha which was enacted, which was fixed by the Chachamim in such a way, which begins with a pethiha, with a Baruch Atah Hashem, but does not end with a hathima of Baruch Atah Hashem, we may not choose to add our own hathima. And this is also how it is explained by the Rambam in his Pirush on the Mishnah, and in fact all the Mefarshim, all the Chachamim have always understood this Mishnah in this fashion. And it is also worthy mentioning that in the Talmud Yerushalmi, Perek Aleph, Halacha Hey of Masechet Berachot, it is quoted the name of Rabbi Yudan. Yudan is like a short form of Rabbi Yudah. He says as follows: a matbe' kasar is a bracha that begins with a baruch and does not end with a baruch, with a hathima. And a matbe' aruch, a longer format of the bracha, of certain brachot, are those brachot, that format which begins and ends with Baruch Atah Hashem. And we have many such examples of this. In fact, also both in Kriyat Shema, Birkat Kriyat Shema, and in Birkat HaMazon. If we take Birkat Kriyat Shema, for example, we know in the morning the first bracha begins Baruch Atah Hashem, etc., Yoser Or V'rei Hoshech, and ends with the Hathima Baruch Atah Hashem Yoser HaMe'oroth. That is a long matbe' aruch, and that is a bracha where the Hachamim instructed us to begin and end with a hathima, or rather to begin with a petiha, I should say, and to end with a hathima. The next bracha that follows in the morning, which is Ahava Rabbah or Ahavat Olam, depending on the different nushaot, there we do not begin with a petiha of Baruch Atah Hashem, but we do end with a hathima. These are examples, therefore, of brachot where the Hachamim fixed the format, the matbe'. The word matbe' means format of the bracha, and we are not allowed to change from that basic format. And the same is true for the bracha that follows Kriyat Shema. For example, we don't begin with the bracha after Kriyat Shema with Baruch Atah Hashem. We just begin Emet Ve'yasiv or Emet Ve'emunah, but we end with a hathima. And the same, of course, is true in Birkat HaMazon. The first bracha of Birkat HaMazon begins with Baruch Atah Hashem, that's the petiha, and ends with Baruch Atah Hashem Hazon et HaKol, and that is a hathima, that is how it must be. But the second bracha begins with Noda Lecha, not with the hathima, not with the petiha, but yes, it does have a hathima at the end, and so on. This is what the Hachamim were referring to in the Mishnah. However, the Nusah, as opposed to matbe', the Nusah, that is to say, the actual words that we say in any given bracha, whether it is the brachot of Kriyat Shema or the brachot of Birkat HaMazon, those words were not set down, were not fixed by the Chachamim. The fact is, we do not have anywhere in Hazal a text which tells us what is the precise Nusah that one should say for Birkat Kriyat Shema or Birkat HaMazon. And in fact, quite the opposite. We have clear proof from the statements of the Chachamim that there was no fixed Nusah. And rather, what was important was that a person no matter what wording he chose to use, whether it was a wording he himself made up or a wording that he learned from his teacher or from his father or that is common in the community, whatever nusach he is using, he must know that there are certain things he must mention. So we said in the nusach of Emet Emunah or Emet Yasiv, one must mention certain concepts such as Makat B'choroth, Kriyat Yam Suf, etc. With regards to Birkat HaMazon, we have a similar concept. The Chachamim say in Masechet Berachoth, in Perek Shvi'i, that when saying Birkat HaMazon, in the second Beracha of Nodalecha, we must mention Berith with Torah, we must mention the concept of Berith Milah, and we must mention the fact that Hashem gave us the Torah, and we must mention, of course, Eretz Yisrael itself, Eretz Hamdot Hava Hava, and if one does not mention all these ideas in that Beracha, one is not Yosei the Hava. The fact that the Chachamim made it clear to us that these things must be stated, that it in fact also tells you that there is no fixed nusah, because if there were, then everyone would be just saying the same nusah from the Siddur or by heart, and there would be no discussion as to what you must and must not say. And this is what the Rashba explains on that Mishnah to which you refer, that the Chachamim were not referring to the actual words, the nusach that one says, because one can use different words to express the same ideas, and this is in fact what we see. All the different minharim today, different nuschaot, if you look at Birkat Kriyat Shema, if you compare those of the Sephardim to the Ashkenazim or the Temanim, you will see they are similar but not identical. The same is true for Birkat HaMazon. If one compares the Birkat HaMazon today of the Sephardim to that of the Ashkenazim or to that of the Temanim, or to Nusach Eretz Yisrael, you will see that these Nusach are all similar, identical. They all mention the same ideas, but some are more wordy and lengthy, and others are more concise. And that is entirely in keeping with the halakha. And therefore, when we published the Nusach of Birkat HaMazon some years ago, we based it on all the ancient texts of Birkat HaMazon that are before us. And if one is curious to know whether this is the shortest possible Nusach of Birkat HaMazon, the Nusach of Eretz Yisrael that we published, the answer to that question would be no, it is not. Because if one looks, for example, at the Nusach of Birkat HaMazon of Rav Sa'adia Gaon and his Siddur, one will find that his Nusach is considerably shorter. In other words, we were not looking to be the shortest necessarily, the shortest Nusach for Birkat HaMazon, nor were we seeking to be the longest, but we were seeking a balanced and precise nusach based on ancient texts, which has an inner cohesion and beauty to it, and I hope that we were successful.
Are there other examples of brachot or tefillot where we find several alternate nuschaot?
Yes, indeed. Based exactly on what we just said, we find the same phenomenon with regards to the most central of the barachot and tefillot that we say on a daily basis, namely the Shmoneh Esrei. If one compares the Shmoneh Esrei of the Temanim to that of the Asfaradim or to that of the Ashkenazim or vice versa, one will find that these nushaot again are all similar in their general format and content, but the nusah, the wording that they use, can be quite different. So again, we have this dichotomy between matbe'ah, the format of the bracha, the format in the case of the Shmoneh Esrei being the fact that this is a tefillah which consists of 18 barachot, which must be recited in a certain order. The first of which baracha of those barachot begins with Baruch and ends with Baruch, but the others that follow only end with Baruch Atah Hashem, as we know. That matbe'ah must be kept to. That cannot be changed, and that is what is being referred to in the Mishnah about not being hothem where one is not allowed to, and not adding a hathima or a pathiha where one is not supposed to do so. On the other hand, the actual wording can be longer or shorter, and therefore we find all the different nushaot today differ from one another in either to a greater or lesser extent. If this were not the case, then one would have to ask oneself the question, how is it possible, for example, that approximately 2 centuries ago, many of the Hasidim in Eastern Europe came up with a new nusach, a nusach that had never existed for the Shmoneh Esrei and other parts of the Tefillah, called Nusah Sefarad, which is actually some kind of a synthesis between the more ancient and traditional Nusach of the Ashkenazim, Nusach Ashkenaz, and the Nusach of the Sfaradim, which was not known until that time in Europe. Some of the Hasidim decided to combine different aspects of these Nusachot, and what resulted was known as Nusach Sefarad, a Nusach that did not exist till 200 years ago. The founder of the Chabad movement, Rabbi Shneur Zalman Miladi, the Baal HaTanya, did the same thing, based on different Nusachot that he had before him, and he came up with a Nusach to which he referred to as the Nusach Ari, which is also not the same as the Nusach Ashkenaz. That was till that time the only Nusach known to the Ashkenazim in all of Europe for something like 800 years, if not more than that. If it were not the case that the precise Nusach of the Barachot and the Tefilloth was not fixed by the Chachamim, as we have explained, then it would not have been possible for these different Chachamim and Admorim to come up with these different Nuschaot. But in fact, it is possible, as we have explained, and therefore we have the many different Nuschaot, and that is perfectly legitimate.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim, and thanks again to the Mishnah class of Hebrew Academy of Hartford, Connecticut. We would like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkat Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.